Welcome all to episode 178, the Rwanda Wildlife Filmmaking Course, documenting mountains of gorillas. I'm not sure how many gorillas we're going to see today, but we'll have a lively conversation nonetheless. We have a couple of filmmakers, an Academy Award nominated filmmaker, and a couple of tour guides, and I'm sure they have multiple additional jobs and responsibilities as well. I'm going to let David McGowan, who's a brother of one of my former master students. She's up in the Chicagoland region area, and I think he's up in Chicago as well right now. He's not in Rwanda. And then he'll introduce himself as well as talk about the project and maybe show a couple of websites and then pass it on to Roger. And we've got a couple of guests who are waiting, and Greg's just jumping in here, so that's good. And then we'll open up for questions today. So, David, would you like to introduce the project and multiple projects I'm sure that you guys have been working on, and what the successes have been, what the purpose and scope is, your mission, the attention that it's gathered, where you're going next? We'll get to all that in the next hour. David.
Thanks, Kurt. So I'm a filmmaker. I've been a filmmaker all my life, but the kinds of films that I do are for organizations like the National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife, and they tend to be short, message-oriented programs. And almost all of my filmmaking has been in the conservation and environmental field. It's something that's just always been important to me since I was a kid. And I was on a shoot in about 2008 for a group called the EnviroVet, and they brought veterinary medicine to wildlife health issues. Nobody had done that before. So I was making a film for them to raise funding. And I was in Uganda, and I was in the Bwindi impenetrable forest where the mountain gorillas are on the Uganda side. And they watch them all the time, 24 hours a day, just to make sure they're not getting sick or they haven't gotten into a poacher snare or whatever. And one of the vets was telling me, hey, one day I was watching these gorillas when a silverback keeled over and died. And he says, that's not remarkable. They die all the time. They're moral. But he said, what happened next was really remarkable. Bunch of females, juveniles came in and started to exhibit, he said, an unmistakable mourning rite. And he had never seen this before. And he once it was over, he went back to the office. He asked his colleagues. Nobody had ever heard of this. He went to the literature, nothing there. He said, if I had a camera and I knew how to use it, we would have made international news, and this would have been an incredible boon to science. He says, you've got to come back here and teach us, the rangers and veterinarians, how to use this gear, because we're the closest ones to the animals. And that started the ball rolling. Fortunately, at one point, one of the gorilla doctors is a good friend. His name's Julius Naziza. He's a good friend of Greg Bakunzi, who's just joined us in the corner there. And Greg said, hey, Dave, if you want to come to Rwanda, I'll host you. And that's all we needed. After COVID had happened and all that, we decided to do a pilot program just to see if this thing would work. And it did. It just really took off. Roger was one of the first students, and that's it up till the current state. I went back again last year, so we've done 2 courses, and each course is about a month long.
I see that Wonjung's in my personal Zoom account. And so, David, if you and I both send her an email.
I'm getting messages yet.
Yeah, send her the correct links. David, if you want to show us the website before we go to Roger and Greg, that'd be fine.
Absolutely. So this is a pretty modest website that I built, and it shows kind of the history in photos of what we've been doing. So this is this is last year's class. There's Roger. We, the class decided on a film about traditional healers, people that go into the forest and use plants to heal people physically, mentally, and spiritually. And we kind of justified it. We're a wildlife filmmaking class. You think of tigers and lions and stuff, but actually plants are wildlife too. So I thought it was a very appropriate topic. I'm going to work with Wonjung here for a minute and try to get her into our group.
Yeah, and I just sent her a note myself. Why don't you pass the baton on to Roger and have him introduce himself and talk a bit more about the project?
Yeah, okay, Roger, you're on, man.
Okay.
Be nice.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so the whole story started when I just came to Red Rocks to ask for the internship program as I was finishing my bachelor's degree in travel and tourism management. So I've got the internship for 3 months about conservation, tourism, and community development through sustainable tourism and conservation of the gorillas. So then after the 3-month internship, I've got the chance to be a volunteer at Red Rocks doing some tour guiding and receptionist and other conservation work, like collaborating with the community in the programs to help the community to benefit from the cultural tourism and tourism in general that is done around the Volcanoes National Park. Then in 2022, there came a program of wildlife filmmaking. So Greg told me that there's gonna be a program. So because I used to be a photographer of Red Rocks before and was passionate and curious about learning how to film and advance my skills in editing and filming good shots. So I was very motivated and encouraged and interested to join. So the class started first in September 2022. We've learned different things like how to set up the cameras, tripods, and after we learned how to edit. And yeah, we've released the 2 movies by now. The first one was One Health Rwanda, which was showing about how if we combine One Health, like human health and environmental health and animal health, it could promote the well-being of domestic animals and wildlife as well, and as well as conserving the environment. Yeah.
Hang on a second before you go to the second one, Roger. David, you can stop the screen share if you can hear me, so we can see Roger. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Go
So
ahead, Roger. Yeah.
normally our program focuses on the conservation of the mountain gorillas and conservation of nature in general through delivering the message through the short movies. Yeah. So we normally do the 3 to 5 minute movies or 7 minute movies. So the second movie was about the birding in Rwanda. That short movie was about showcasing the habitats of Rwanda, because Rwanda is among the Albertine Rift Valley region. So in Rwanda, we have some endemic birds that are only found in Congo, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. So Rwanda is very attractive for the bird. That's why we came up with an idea of making that movie. So it was just to show the people who want to visit the country what they can do, especially for birds, and also to promote the conservation of the birds in general and wildlife through that movie. Yes, so in the second class of 2023, we've got new students and we learned mostly about transcripting. So transcripting is the way to narrate the movie and make it short but straight to the point without taking too much time to deliver the message. And now we are working on 2 movies by now. One movie is the traditional medicine, by way I want to showcase the culture of Rwanda, how they used to treat people, different diseases, by using traditional herbs that are found in the bushes, in the gardens of everyone. And the second movie that we are working on is the Planet Birdsong movie. So normally Planet Birdsong is a non-profit organization which is located in the UK, in England. So their objective is to train the youth and other people who are interested to learn how to record bird sounds as a tool to promote the conservation of the birds by delivering the data to different platforms like eBird so that people can be aware of what we have in the region. So we are working on that movie to help them to deliver the message of what they do, especially as we are also working on conservation wildlife filmmaking. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. And I guess we should pass the baton on to Greg, and then we'll go to Wonjung after Greg. Yep. You want to do a brief introduction, Greg?
All right. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks. So it's really great to meet you this evening, which I think is morning on your time. I would be more than happy, it's a short introduction about myself. I started as a local tour guide around the Volcano National Park, which is our the hometown of, we call it the hometown of the mountain gorillas. Anyway, that's how we call it. Then back in 2001, I set up my own travel agents. And all the travel agents, what was doing was to take people to see the mountain gorillas. But then after that, what else would the people do? So after seeing the gap between the community and the people that were going to see the mountain gorillas, that's when I sort of setting up a social enterprise by the name Red Rocks Rwanda. So I set up Red Rocks Rwanda back in 2007. And after setting it up, I realized that there is more of other tourism products that are not yet developed and would be developed to sustain what was the main attraction of Rwanda. And that's how I set up a non-profit organization by the name Red Rocks Initiative for Sustainable Development, with the aim of trying to see how can we bring community conservation and tourism together. Then, after hearing, of course, from my friend Dr. Julius introducing me to Dave, and started getting in touch with Dave online. We had some WhatsApp calls, Zoom. And then, of course, COVID came in. It was a long discussion that we had for almost maybe 3 to 4 years, like that. That's when we were discussing. I was, Greg, I'm trying to see how I can get to Rwanda. As soon as I have a ticket, I'm going to come to Rwanda. But then after hearing really the whole concept of his project, I thought this is one of the great projects that could even promote what we were doing within the local communities in connection with the gorillas, of course, and other wildlife around our hometown. So that's how I got to invite Dave. Fair enough and good enough, the good news, he came in the right time. He came in the right time during when the government was naming the baby gorillas, and he came around that time. So we had almost like a week, 2 weeks, and I managed to hook him inside the namers. I mean, not the namers, of course, the people who were going on a farm trip around Rwanda to see more of the country, which worked out very well as someone who was really helping us in connecting conservation, community, and tourism. So he got some good shots and started connecting with other people who were in the event. So I thought this is something that I can be a part of. And I thought, Dave, we're going to do all our best to see how this project can work out. And I'm glad that Rogers, who was volunteering in our compound, also managed to be a part of this program. And we invited the other kids around the village. We first had almost 13 people, and then he came for the second time, and now we are even seeing some more interest into that. And I'm hoping that once we are able to develop, to come up with like different movies showing community conservation and tourism, this is something that people would be more than happy to see, to understand. We managed even to get in touch with one of the university from the States that is more involved also, would like also to be a part of the program. And I was much interested also to hear the type of the ideas they have also behind the conservation. But there are so many ways that we can send the message of conservation and wildlife is in a community as well, but through videos, movies, artwork, and other things that are being done by the local communities. And also involving the local communities is one of the best things of seeing how Rogers is getting much interested into this, a future behind that. If Dave has been doing this for the last 50 years, how can Rogers also do it for the next of his generation, for the next of his life that he is here? And also at the same time, showing the showcase, wildlife, community, and conservation. That's all what I'm so excited about the project. And I hope that we can get more partners to make this project a success. Thank you.
Sounds great. And we have another filmmaker who's joined us today, Wonjung Bae, who did her first film at age 16, Grandfather and Me, but has also worked for BBC, for PBS, Frontline, and also up there in Boston with you, Chris, WGBF in Boston, or GBH in Boston. Yeah. And so I don't want to mess up anymore, but let's let Wonjung introduce herself and talk about her involvement in this project. Wonjung. She's now at Johns Hopkins University, I guess, right?
Yes, I'm teaching at Johns Hopkins at the moment at the Film and Media Studies department. So I was a David intern about 15 years ago, 16 years ago when I was doing my MFA in film in Chicago. So I mean, yeah. So I was that exchange, international students studying in Chicago film. And then I went back to Korea and then made international co-production documentaries and ended up working for BBC for 7 years before I joined the Johns Hopkins. And throughout all those years, I kept in contact with David. David is so much fun. I love his filmmaking. And then one day he asked me if I would have a time to join on Zoom to take a look at some of the cuts that his students are making in Africa. So I kind of had this great opportunity to be introduced to this group of young local filmmakers. And it was amazing how little resource they had, yet they had such a rich story to tell. So yes, it was a little bit challenging to talk about edits over Zoom without actually going through sitting together next to each other, looking at the timelines together, especially with a bit of this challenging internet situation. So I tried to give once a lecture about just basic five types of edit by Roy Thompson. But just imagine, like, without being able to show the example clips, you just need to explore all this edit concepts only by words. It was a bit challenging, but at the same time, literally through the different reiterations of edits, like these students and local filmmakers were making improvement. And we actually made it to films, and I'm super proud. And I just love this idea of a local community making films on their own stories. Like once, we had this rough edit on the bird watching, and I was asking, do you have any more insert shot of a bird? And the filmmaker was like, oh, yes, we do, but we don't have any special one. And so I asked, can I just see what you have? And to my eye, like, they were all fabulous birds, What do I know about birds? But the filmmaker, the bird watcher was saying, no, 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 these are not special bird. We need a special bird. So let me go out, shoot again. Like, so I was like, oh my God. They're like, they really bring in their knowledge and their specialty into this filmmaking. And yes, like in terms of level of a filmmaking, it's a very, very introductory level, but at the same time, and their resources are very limited, but at the same time, their contents is just invaluable. It's just invaluable. So I'm enjoying it.
Have you been to Rwanda?
No.
Do you want to go?
Of course, of course. I made a short film in Madagascar once, and I passed through Kenya once, but never been to Rwanda. I'd love to.
Okay, there you go, David. That's wonderful. All of you, it's such a delight to have you with us today. And thank you again for coming in here. And David, I have a quick clarification. You were showing the website and it had a spooling set of pictures on it. The people who are listening to the podcast later will not be able to understand that. Could you describe in words for a minute before we go to questions from the co-hosts, maybe a minute and a half, what was represented in the various images that we all saw? What were they doing in terms of filmmaking, and why was that important to show?
Should I share the screen again for you guys and go through the? Oh no,
I don't think so. I think we've seen them all. So yeah, one of
the more remarkable things that I found when I was there teaching, and I'm using the word teaching very broadly. I'm not really. I've never been trained as a teacher. That's why I had asked Wonjung to come in and give me a hand. I'm more like a coach than I am a teacher, and but one of the things that I saw when we were going through the class presentations with the equipment. Some of it's, kind of involved. It's got menus, you got a sub menus, and they're tough concepts. And some of the students, everybody spoke English to some degree, but some of them, it was not a robust understanding of English. And what I found was that if I talked for like 5 minutes and then stopped and then asked like the guys that were good in English to tell the guys that weren't good in English, to tell the lesson in Kinyarwanda, it worked on 3 levels. Number one, the obvious one, the guys that don't have strong English skills got the lesson, in their language. But it also helped the guys that spoke English well to translate what I had said into Kinyarwanda and then present it to their classmates. So it reinforced the idea in their head. But I think one of the best things about it was that because they were doing this with each other, there was this bonding that happened among the students. There was never any sort of competitiveness, any pettiness. Everybody really pitched in to help the slowest ones of the class, catch up on any given topic. And the other thing I wanted to bring up was Roger was talking about transcriptions. And this is a particular part of filmmaking that a lot of people probably aren't aware of that don't make films. But we'll interview somebody for like 40 minutes. And then we have to take that interview back, transcribe it, and then cut out sections and repaste them and do a paper cut. And it's tough because you have to mine that material for memes, for ideas, and understand what those ideas are, understand what your narrative arc is. And it's a tough concept if you've never been through it. These guys, they jumped on it, and it was great to watch them all because I had nothing to do with the traditional healer interview. I don't speak Kinyarwanda. It was all on them, and they translated or transcribed her interview in Kinyarwanda, worked in it in Kinyarwanda, and made a paper cut, and then took it back to the laptop with the editing app and put it together. That was really cool. I hadn't anticipated that sort of depth of involvement from the students.
Sounds wonderful. All of this. I mean, I'm sure we're going to have many questions for you, and Chris is going to start us off. Chris.
So I have I want to muse a little bit about the theory of action, of how we get people involved with positive responses to what's going on with climate change and with many other kinds of ecosystem destruction that are affecting flora and fauna. And I have colleagues here at Harvard that work in this area. Professor Tina Grotzer, who we had on an earlier show with our work in ecosystems education, is one of them. And she's studying hope, how to keep hope in a context of climate change. So I watch a lot of documentaries. I find them very moving and valuable. But there's kind of a narrative arc that is difficult. First, the documentarians want to establish that something is really happening because there are so many deniers of what's going on. And so they really have to punch across that there are huge things happening in different ecosystems that are destroying lots and lots of things that are important. And then they have to establish that people should really care about something that's happening halfway around the world from them in a very different place with a kind of animal or plant that they may never have heard of. And so they've got to make that case. But once you've made those two cases, I think most of the audience feels a sense of despair because they've documented the dramatic things that are happening, seemingly uncontrollable, with many people denying them, and clear links to human stewardship and even human life on the planet. So somehow there has to be something at the end that says, but wait, it's not too late. We can still do something about this.
Yeah,
and I see that as lacking in a lot of the documentaries that I see. And I just wonder if you wrestle with that narrative arc, or if you think that whole way of portraying it is wrong. I want to hear that.
But I would come at it from a different direction. Sorry to jump in like this, but you bring up some really good points. Part of the reason why that we want to do this filmmaking for rangers, trackers, and guides, people from the communities adjacent to the parks, it's going to be in their voice. Usually the messages about climate change and about what's happening in the world and the environment is all coming from the West. And the people that live next to the parks, they're farmers, and subsistence farmers. It's not reaching them. Those messages aren't getting to them. And our hope is that by teaching people that speak Kinyarwanda, that live in those communities, they can take that message directly to the people in the communities, in their language. And that's not speaking to your question about hope. And we all struggle with that. What can we say? Look at me. I'm at the end of my little journey through life. And my hope is by teaching guys like Roger and thinking that, okay, maybe our generation didn't do it. We didn't get there yet. But my hope is in guys like Roger, because he feels it too. And he's young and he's vigorous. And if I can give him some of my experience and show him some skills, he can carry the baton forward, because it's good. Like you said, it's going to be a bumpy century. It's tough. But guys like Roger and the other students, they give me a lot of hope.
Anyone else want to jump in here with a comment? It looks like Punya wants to jump in. I haven't introduced the co-host, by the way. We have Christine from Harvard. We have Punya Mishra from Arizona State. We have Young Zhao. He's now situated in Oregon, but he works for University of Kansas and University of Melbourne. And myself, Kurt Bong from Indiana. So I had to jump in for people listening to the show later. So Punya, jump in here.
Sure. So I'm going to ask a very sort of a pragmatic question. How do you fund and support this work? I mean, I completely understand that it could be a labor of love, because as we were talking before the show, this entire Silver Lining for Learning is the four of us who meet, and we, there is no funding for it. We pay for the web hosting and the whatever out of our own pockets. And it's just wonderful meeting people and having these conversations. So one is, how is this supported and how do you see that? And I would love to hear from Roger and Greg about sort of what meaning this has had for you both personally, but also within the broader community within which you live. So maybe David and Wonjung, you can talk about sort of the infrastructure piece, and then I'd love to hear from Roger and Greg about their sort of personal experience and also what influence it is having in the broader conversation.
That's a really good question. We're not sure how we're going to sustain it. Just this past week, I was on an international Teams call with the Park Service, talking to people in Nigeria about having the program done there. There's been some other interest in other countries. We are always searching for grants. I just put in a grant for at the Rufford Foundation in the UK. So yeah, it's just feral sort of scrambling anywhere we can. We'll listen to anybody, talk to anybody, and just try to make it happen. So, but you're right, it can't sustain with Greg and I doing, lifting it every year. It won't have a future for that way, but we're working on it.
For me, my priority is if I can look into a generator, one good generator, and maybe 3 more MacBook, to send it to Red Rock, because these students are really just sharing one notebook to edit these films. So, I'm literally like looking into, okay, where can I find a generator and 3 MacBooks that I can send it to, Rwanda.
So there you have it, listeners. If you're interested in involvement in this project, I have David's email and Wonjung's email, and you can send them your contributions and donations. We'll find out how. They'd love to get generators and laptops and other technologies on this project. And I'll just point out, what Punya mentioned, we have an unfunded project here, but it's an award-winning project. 3 times in the past year, we've gotten awards for this show.
Congratulations.
Anyone listening out there, you can get involved in this new age of digital teaching and learning in a influential way, in an impactful way, just like David and Wonjung and Greg and Roger are doing. So I applaud all of you. Roger or Greg, you want to jump in next?
Before we do that, let me just get this in this one, because this was a really big mistake on my part, or overlooked. We have a crowdfunding site at Indiegogo. If you punch in Rwanda wildlife filmmaking, it'll come up, and the crowdfunding is still live. So if you feel like you can contribute something, that's the place to go. Yeah. Is there a way I can share that, Kurt, with you to
we'll put it on the website. And so yeah.
If you can just share, if you just drop the link right here in the chat, I'll make sure that when I publish the video and the podcast, I'll make sure that it goes in the show notes for that.
All right, thanks. I just want to get that out.
No, for sure.
Roger, talk now.
Not a problem. That's easy. Just drop the link over here, or you can just email Kurt or me or whatever, and we can put it on there.
Wonderful. Roger?
Here I am.
Any comments on what you've heard so far?
Yeah, so far so good.
So I was just wondering, Roger or Greg, if you could speak to like what impact this has had on the broader community within which you're living. I mean, how do you share the movies? What kinds of conversations have come out of it?
So normally we have a center at Red Rocks. It's like where we have the editing room. And Red Rocks is a community center, so we have a lot of youth coming there. So we bring them in our production room and then screen what we are doing and explain why. And also those ones who wishes, we try to teach them like essential things, just simple things like how to set up the camera, how to take a picture. Yeah. And also sometimes among our youth community around Red Rocks, some of them are musicians. Like when they have music shoot, like when they want to shoot something, we assist them with the camera and some recorder, and sometimes I help them to shoot different angles and to edit just for free, just to show them that this program we have here is not for one person, it's just for everyone around, just develop ourselves in the village so that we can help each other to get on something good. Yeah.
Roger, what's the youngest person you've worked with and the oldest person? I'm curious, I wonder what the range is of your audience, of your clients.
So the oldest person, I'm not really sure her age, but she's around 60s, I think. It's Hilary McBean from Planet Birdsong. So we are working on the movie about birds and bird calls in Rwanda, just to encourage people to love birds, to love conservation and take care of them and the habitat. Yeah, and to promote that program, even though it is in Rwanda, they are willing to spread it all over East Africa. So that movie will be one of the tools to send the message to the audience. Yes. And the youngest person we've been working, he's not that young. Also, he's a businessman. He has a quarry close to Red Rocks. So he's like 50s or 45 years old. Yeah, he paid some amount of money to us, and we made him a short movie about his products, and it was like a marketing movie. Yeah, yes. Other movies we made were just for our groups, because before, in the 2022 class, we had 4 groups, and every group had the topic to work on. The first one was One Health Rwanda, and the movie came out successfully. The second one is Birding in Rwanda. The movie came out. The third one was Clean Water. And the fourth one was about climate change. So we are still working on those 2 ones in the future, but also we are
You may have lost Roger.
Yeah, and I think, Punya, I think your question was the range of, or Kurt, was the range of student ages.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was from 19 to about 35.
Okay, thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Dave.
My thinking is filmmaking could be entire educational system, you know, every kind of course could be taught through film, just inquiry-based learning, right? So, Greg, you're muted, Greg, you unmute.
Yeah, I'm here. Hello. I really liked the question. Yeah, that was the question about the climate change, and so I was talking about also the sustainability of the project and how the project is being funded. So when all the initiatives that we came up with, the whole we always know in the beginning it's always very difficult. So that's all what we know. But once this is being developed, who are going to sustain this project? It's not Dave who is going to sustain. It's not Chris who is going to sustain this. This is going to be sustained by Rogers, Greg, the people who are taking it. Let's say, for example, we are talking about like taking some videos or films from the local communities and everything. They have, when we were initiating this, the whole idea was to see how can the local community be benefiting from what they are doing. They are not going to sit there, but this is something that we want to see. How can this benefit from them? Let's say, will these people be able to go in the village and take some videos, some film of the wedding, a local wedding? Can this some musicians to put his song out? Can they be going out and go and do that? So that's all what we want to be seeing. And that's the way how this could be sustainable. So when we also talk about the Rangers. What will the Rangers, how can the Rangers sustain this? The Rangers, they might participate into this conservation, wildlife conservation filmmaking. They make a film by themselves, how they started. And then they can pass that film to their generation, to their families. Then their family will grow up with that knowledge, say, hey, my dad used to be a ranger, this is what he was doing. So this is something that can sustain the whole, it can go from generation to a generation through a movie. Let's say, for example, when we were born, nobody who knew about Diana Fossey. But now, through her movie, everybody's just, the message is still there. If I want to know more about Diana Fossey, what do? I go and look for the movie, I screen it up, and I see how did this started. Was her research? What was the story behind this? So this is all what we can sustain. So it means the movie Gorillas in the Mist has been and years, and people are still watching it. So it's the same program that will be a sustainable program by the ownership, the local communities who are already involved. So when it comes to climate change conservation, climate, it's not something we are going. For us, sometimes we don't even read about the climate. It's something that comes like the rain. We don't know when it's going to rain. It just comes in. But depending on how the cloud is changing, that's how we know, oh, tonight it's going to rain. Yes. But we know that the climate change is there. We know that this is also something that might also affect us. That's also something that we know we could even be able to deal with on our way of making the wildlife filming conservation program a success. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Young has a question jumping in here, right, Young?
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering from Greg talking about the benefits, because you look at David is putting his time in this, and we have Wonjung putting time in this, and of course Greg and Roger, and everybody's putting your time into it, right? It's something that has to have either psychological benefit that you feel good, called labor of love. You want to do this. At the same time, you should have, when David talking about the farmers, like subsistence farmers, my village is like that in China. So people have the farm. I was thinking about if you were teaching a course like this to people in my village, would they take it, and how would they take it? So I'm just curious into thinking about, when we do this, especially when David commented about Western ideas, Western styles, Western technology. When Wonjung think about sending a generator, 3 MacBooks, I'm just thinking about the idea, climate change, colonization, anti-colonization. I'm just thinking about a lot of these are significant efforts you guys are doing. It could bring changes. And of course, the films Greg and Roger make maybe we go way beyond wildlife. They're talking about marketing, farming. And I was just wondering, David, especially, I think, are you helping or working with them to think about how to publicize their films? So when you have more audience, you definitely can have a lot more potential benefits. I'm sure Wonjung and Greg and Roger, feel free to jump in. Like, how do you get more audience? TikTok, I guess, YouTube, and or film festivals, whatever you guys are doing, just to enlarge or enhance the benefits that can be brought to the communities and the people who participate in the project.
That's a good question, and distribution is really a big part of filmmaking. You can't separate filmmaking from distribution. But there's 2 things about distribution: is the number of people and the quality of the audience. The demographic. Are you reaching the right people? So one of the things that I bring to this is that I have a long career with government agencies and NGOs. So I can go back to them and say, hey, we just did this film about One Health. Would you post it on your website? And it's easy to embed from YouTube. So in that modest way, their work that's being done in Rwanda is reaching out beyond the Muzanzi community to a world audience and an audience with. So the One Health Commission said, yeah, we will embed this on our site. So now people that go to the One Health Commission website from around the world can see this short film about what they're doing with One Health in Rwanda.
Yeah, when I also jump into Young's question, Dave, very quickly, is that Dave Rogers, one of the first things that I know from everything that people are doing, as long as you don't have the passion into something that you are doing, or as long as you have the intention of saying, how much am I going to benefit from this right away, you are not going to make it. So first of all, you have to create the passion in what you are doing before you even think of how is this going to pay me back. You know, if you start thinking of paying me back, this is not going to be. We're going to meet the climate change challenge be in front of us. So there will always be a challenge. So one thing I know is Rogers is passionate about this. Dave is also passionate about this. He's not doing it because he wants to get paid tomorrow or he wants to make sure, I'm going to be famous because of this. This is not going to work out. So I'm doing this. I know that I'm doing this. I like it. I have my own business on side, but I know that this is something that I can do and make sure that it's benefiting so many people. The more people I see getting involved into this and benefiting from this, that's my passion. That's my success. Seeing how everyone is leaping from that. Even if they get $1 from it, this is going to work out. So when we mean about like getting into the audience. So we have created some festivals. In fact, Dave came on the right time when there was a gorilla naming ceremony, where we also launched the what we call Red Rocks Culture Festival, and we are able to screen such a videos to the local communities just to inspire them to see, hey, this is what we are doing. Apart from that, also to make the publicity of this, we are looking also people like universities who are working in universities, people who are working on radio calls, to be able to spread the word. You know, the more people we get on board to work with us, the better for the word to be spread out. So that's why I'm saying that there is always a kind of like once we pull all our hands together, we're gonna make this success. And we have people who are passionate about this. Thank you.
Wonderful. We're going to go back to Chris with another question or comment.
Just a quick question. I'm wondering if there is a informal community of people across the world who in different countries with different species are doing similar things. They're trying to, document what's going on. They're trying to involve the local population as well as people a long way away. And if there is a community like that, how does it work? Do you have conferences? Do you have, some kind of listservs, social media, or is it just kind of isolated?
I think we're the only ones. I don't know who. Yeah, I've looked, and I think that's one of the advantages of what we're doing is that it's so new. It's so out there that people haven't really thought about it. People have like conferences where they'll fly people in from Hollywood and they'll have an event, a gala event and so forth. And then they fly out again. Nothing gets done.
Well, maybe
what we're doing
this,
is that we come in,
yeah.
we bring equipment, we show them how to use the equipment. I leave, but I leave the equipment at Red Rocks, and we encourage the students to continue their learning on their own and to keep in touch with me through Zoom. You can't walk away. You can't walk away and think that it's going to go on its own. No, it won't. And I can tell now that it's going to take several years of doing this. But like Greg indicated, now we're talking about having a film festival at Red Rocks, an international film festival at Red Rocks. It's just getting started, but the people that we're working with have a lot of confidence that we can make this happen. And wow, I mean, just think of having a wildlife film festival in Red Rocks, in Muzanzi, in Rwanda, and it wouldn't have happened if we didn't start the class there. So once you start doing something, all these other sort of opportunities begin to emerge that you had never even anticipated.
Well,
I guess
hopefully the publicity from this will be helpful.
Yeah, oh yeah, thanks. No, really.
I
Go
just
ahead,
want-
Wonjung. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No
interrupt.
worries. I just want to add two things as a context in terms of the idea of like a citizen journalism or participatory media. Like actually there is this a very strong concept where citizens or the community members actually they become the media makers. And there is a very strong educational component in filmmaking. So when I'm approaching this project, I also think that this is less of like a making professional filmmakers, but this is more of media access project where I am trying to share very basic level of media making with the local communities. So there is actually that concept, and one of very fine example that really became a professional level was Omai News in South Korea, that South Koreans established a media company based on citizen journalists. So they do have their staff journalists, but they also get most of their entries from citizen journalists. And they have these classes where they regularly offer basic, opportunity to learn about basics of journalism to everyone, every citizen who want to participate. So there is that one tradition. At the same time, when it comes to the very tradition of documentary filmmaking, from very early on, like Nanook of the North, like we documentary filmmakers always involved our subject into our filmmaking. Like we had them as a part of our creation. But at the same time, we are going one step further by literally giving this camera to them in a way. So they're the one, we are trying to share our knowledge with our subject so that they can actually become cameraman, sound person. So the concept wise, this is not new, but I guess this is it has another level of this unlikeliness where like because of this Zoom and a new digital technology, like we are keeping somehow, we are trying to keep this connectivity like sustained online. And I think that's very interesting because that is based on this new technology that enables us to be able to do this. So like definitely this Zoom, new technology, online internet, and also like, for instance, like, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, one of students from the second year, he actually went to COP28. He's just a local, young man in Rwanda who managed to find his way to go to COP28. And then he had a small camera with him. He filmed and interviewed people there, and then he brought it back. And he's trying to make his first YouTube channel with these interview clips. So, and interestingly, I recently just found out that there is this American funding scheme where they can fund an African students, if they want to study in US in institutions. And one of the institutions that supports that program is Cornell, where when these people collect the bird songs, that data goes to Cornell. So maybe these students can apply for this grant and ended up going to Cornell, where all these bird songs that he has been helping recording are actually being processed and archived. Like this unlikeliness of this kind of networking, very individual level, very exceptional level, but I don't know, like somehow this internet is enabling us to be able to make this very exceptional, but a case at a time. So I'm just in awe. So
Occasionally the internet can be for good.
yes.
You know, it reminds us of on the Nepal episode we had 3 years ago where the kids were learning from MOOCs to learn English initially, but then during COVID, they learned much more. And a couple of those kids are interviewing at Princeton and other universities in the US now, 3 years. They're adolescents, they're teenagers. Now they're 18, 19. They're interviewing for university study. I have a final question. I don't know if we have much time left here, and it's going to be a quick one here. We have a few minutes. We started a couple of minutes late. I'm always curious about impact, some way, shape, or form, and I'm wondering if any of you have any testimonials, quotes, or feedback on the projects, or a case story of someone who's benefited from the project. I like to look at life change. So do you have any, can you tell any stories about people who've been involved in this project? Any of you?
Well, I'll go real quick. The one that comes to me is David Nibishaka. He was one of the students in the first class. He's a wildlife veterinarian. And one of the things that we set up in the class was to have Zooms with professors and veterinarians around the world that would speak to the class at Greg's place. And one of those was Val Beasley, the guy that started EnviroVet. He's a wildlife veterinarian himself. And that it was great in the Zoom meeting that Val and David bonded. David's just starting out in his career in wildlife health. And here he's talking to this storied professor, Val Beasley. And they've continued to be in touch with one another, and it's just been a really cool outcome that I would never have anticipated from the class.
I'd like to hear more, David. We'll talk after this. Anyone else want to add to that? Any stories of impact?
Yeah, I want to add something.
Go ahead,
I've
David.
been benefiting from this program because I was normally a bird guide, but I had no skills on how to shoot birds on field. And I was always saying, oh my God, how can I get a chance to show the people what we do on field, what we show the guests, the tourists who are visiting the country. So because of the program, we have some cameras and the long lens for the birds. So once I'm out with the tourists, I can take some pictures of the birds that we have seen and then post them on Facebook, Instagram, and people want to visit Rwanda and want to see what we have. That's the first clue. They can see our post and see what we have. So it's a big impact. And another thing I can say, this program gave me the chance to be getting some future jobs of filmmaking in my career, and they can be benefiting from this program started as a voluntary program. Thank you.
Thank you. We might have time for maybe 15 seconds. You have a quick comment, Greg?
Yeah, I have a quick comment. One of the things that we have really seen from this program is that since David started delivering the people at Edrocks, we are no longer hiring the camera. We have the before we used it to hire the camera to rent the camera. These days we have Rogers on the ground, and Rogers has got the camera that was brought by Dave. So that shows that it has cut the gap of renting the cameras to do some filming and editing. So even the computer that we have at the ground, it shows that it's making our program very easy. So we are already, the communities are benefiting from that, and we are able to edit some small videos to show the people what is happening on the ground. So that's another success to what we are already doing. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Chris.
Any final comment, Wonjung or David? You're muted, David, by the way.
Just one thing. What strikes me is that you think about, this is going to sound kind of out there, but today, the King Kong franchise, it must be billions of dollars by now. Started in the 1920s. It's gone all the way through. The reason why we have King Kong franchise is because somebody took pictures. Conrad, I think his name was Carl Akeley from the American Museum, took some pictures, moving pictures, of mountain gorillas in 1919. And he brought them back to New York, and that's what spawned the King Kong franchise. You know, it's now what I'd like to see is that the Rwandans and the Ugandans gain control of that, of their wildlife, of their birthright, and they make the films and the franchises that go out to become 100 years now, you know, who knows what. But the power of film is just incredible. And yeah, it's ubiquitous with lots of cameras now, but to channel it, to give it, put it in the right hands like Rogers, and start making movies, who knows where it can end up.
Lovely way to end this show. Wonjung, just 10 seconds. You want to say goodbye before we exit out to the next show? Wonjung?
I think in terms of the impact, we have a bigger impact to come than what he already created.
That's a great way to end. Thank you all for this show. It's been lovely to have you here on this Saturday morning in the Eastern Time Zone. Young Zhao is gonna introduce our next show. Thank you, David. Thank you, Wonjung. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Greg. Wow.
Well, thank you very much, Roger,
Thank you.
Greg, and Wonjung,
Good to
David.
see you,
And
Roger.
that was a great show. Thank you. So next week, as many of you know, that I've been trying to bring a number of shows that featuring students. And last week we had students from California and South Carolina featured with the work with Digital Promise. And next week we're going to bring students from Beijing, China, Beijing and Chongqing, China, who have been involved in a project I started. It's called ICEE. It's called Innovation, Creativity, and Entrepreneurship Education. And these students are in high school, and they've been with the project for several years. Mainly, they'll be talking about how to find and solve problems, how to personalize education, and how to connect learning to a global context, which is very much like the Rwanda. And how do we connect globally? So that's going to be next week, and see you next week. Thank you.